Robert, welcome to Global Ginga. Thanks for coming along and introducing yourself to us, to our audience, and to this beautiful piece of work that you have here. So, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your connection and passion for Brazilian music?
Well, Carla, thank you for inviting me. It's a joy to be here. Happy holidays to you.
Oh, yes, likewise.
And let's consider this a gift of heart, our gift of heart. Not
Sounds pretty
Christmas in
good.
Rio. I'm in Atlanta and you're in California. Well, I'm originally from Chicago. I live in Atlanta now. I've been here about 30 years. I've been going to Brazil for over 20 years now. And what actually brought me there was my business, my international business, which was in the communications industry. But my background started in music as a teenager 50 years ago. And it was very fortuitous because my first trip, or first trips to Brazil, brought me in contact with Brazilian music in a different way. And I was very intrigued and I started asking questions and the opportunity to bring together my own musical history and find a synergy with Brazilian music. Um, that's what those journeys to Brazil brought. And the project we're working on now is Bossa Nova Noites 1 by Noites,
Right, we've
which,
been listening to that. I actually played the first track, The Black Sailors.
oh my goodness. Well, it's so you'll get the idea. It's a journey in itself. This concept album, which is what I came up on, concept albums, not a series of individual songs, because we wanted to tell a story. And this story here is about the what I refer to as the Black music diaspora, which is Africa and Brazil and the southern part of the United States, where my family's from, New Orleans and Mississippi, and then up the train lines through Memphis and Chicago, Detroit, and back. And I wanted to tell a story about how all of this music, there's a commonality to it. And the central theme of our music and of this album is that there's a commonality or a there's a commonality of of that exists with Brazilian soul and Chicago soul, or the blues and samba. And samba is very much the soul of Brazilian music. It's the father of bossa nova, for example, which most of the world appreciates and understands as Brazilian music. But I learned from the Jobeams, Paula Jobim, the late Paula Jobim, who was a friend, that his father would be a little bit amused that people keep referring to bossa nova as jazz when it's actually samba infused with jazz. And so the ability to bring those different elements together, very much like American music, where what we understand as pop music and R&B and all of that, that the origin is jazz and blues. And so I found this common place, and this album is an opportunity to express that. And I do this with wonderful musicians, mainly Brazilian musicians, a few musicians from Chicago, two wonderful Brazilian singers, Monique and Mari Bodas, who are introduced to the world in English, which is a first, I believe. And they do a wonderful job. And I hope you're enjoying them on the album. Also, Najia's on the album, the great jazz star, and Curtis King Jr.
Yeah, I wanted you to speak a little bit more about the two Brazilian singers that you selected for this album because I had not heard of them before hearing to this, and they have done such an amazing work. Not only are they pretty powerful singers, but they sound so good in English. Do they even speak English?
Yes, they do.
They do? Okay, that's
They
good.
do. The thing is I like to tell people this is a pretty big platform. We're right now being played in over 20 countries and over 20 states here in the United States. And a platform like this, where they have the opportunity to, with a clear mind and a clear throat, to art interpret these American songs in English with Brazilian artists. And it takes a gift to do that, a special gift and a special understanding, which we are that's playing out in our social media with Instagram, where we're telling these stories and we're giving the context. I met them about 2.5 years ago, and it was very evident to me that they were extraordinary.
How did you
Uh,
meet them?
Well, I auditioned them for a concert we did, a concert television pilot for about global music, about this legacy and alchemy of Brazilian music. And I auditioned them to perform in that concert for television, which has been sold in Europe, and you'll hear more about that. And then I decided to continue the relationship with them. We manage them now, and so you can look ahead to their solo albums. One is very much an MPB singer, a soulful MPB singer. The other is very much a pop R&B singer. And that is, they are Brazilian. What we wanted to do was introduce them to the world before they were introduced in Brazil. There's a way to differentiate them from every other Brazilian singer, which they are. Um, the gift that they have to be able to interpret this music with soul and context is extraordinary. I've worked with a few dozen of the best singers in the world. We've been very successful at that. And they can do everything those other singers can do, and they can do some things that I've never seen any singer do. And that's not hyperbole, that's not overstatement. You can hear some of this on the album, and you certainly will be hearing that over the course of the next year. But I would also like to add, talent is one thing, but context and humanity and humility and grace and consciousness to be successful. In my 50 years of being around music and around success, I've learned that those are the differentiators, and they have those things.
Robert, you are a producer. Are you also a musician?
Well, implicitly, yes. I started my career as a bass player, but I learned that my path was something else when I was young. I was pretty good, I believe. But one of my contemporaries is Daryl Jones, the bass player with the Rolling Stones for 30 years. Before that, Miles Davis and Sting and Madonna. And so when you're a teenager and you encounter someone with that kind of gift, you quickly understand, if you have insight and context, that if you're playing the same instrument, that there is a difference between someone who is gifted like that. And I have some other experiences like that in my teen years where I realized that may not be my gift as a player, but my gift was in other things. And where I came to understand that my gift was in orchestration and in production and bringing people together in a way that they can do things in a way that perhaps individually they wouldn't do, and to shepherd that. And that's what a producer does. Quincy Jones once said, a producer is the guy that comes in with a puzzle and dumps it on the table and says to people, okay, let's put this puzzle back together, but in a different way. And you do this and you do that. And it comes back together collaboratively in a way that did not exist before. And that's what a producer does. That's one of the definitions of a producer.
Well, I'm going to leverage what you just said there because it's so interesting to me. And now that I don't think I have ever interviewed a producer. So now you just sparked a lot of questions in my imagination. And I'm a curious person by nature, but I don't want to drag us through the whole production process in this interview. I know you probably have a lot of things to say, but if we can kind of narrow down to maybe three very important aspects about this specific project and about preserving bossa nova while you're also blending elements from jazz and blues and R&B and that Chicago sound. What happened in the beginning? How do you put that all together, preserving the two separate sounds, but at the same time bringing them together?
Well, I would say authenticity is one, integrity is another, and gift. Um,
But
I should have written that down.
how does that translate in a studio?
Well, for example,
Hmm.
and I'll have to use reference, which is
Yes.
how I actually produce music and how I, you know, communicate. Is what I mean by authenticity. Um, the Brazilian meter, rhythmic meter, is different than the American rhythmic meter. And as someone who's outside of his culture, I'm an American from Chicago, producing in Brazil with Brazilian musicians. The last thing that I should do, but most, if not all, American producers make the mistake, is that they impose their meter, sense of rhythm on Brazilian musicians. Now, in the converse, if you think about American jazz, the great American jazz tradition, if a Brazilian musician came to the US and started telling masters of Brazilian jazz how to play rhythmically, they would be completely wrong to the point of being ridiculously wrong. Well, I don't do that. I've had the great pleasure to work with 5 or 6 of the greatest Brazilian drummers and percussionists that ever lived. And so me imposing my sense of rhythm on them is wrong. Whatever they play is correct, whether I agree with it or not. And as a producer, my job is to, and this is where integrity comes in, is to accept that it may not be what I envision, but accept that it's probably right. And in terms of bringing those elements together, whether you're combining elements, you're on a path that you will create something unique, because what they are doing is interpreting some other things that I want to interpret. And in this case, we're interpreting these American songs, Chicago soul songs, and something I knew they could do because that music resonates with them, being great musicians who can play popular music and have played with the greatest Brazilian popular stars and Brazilian jazz, and understanding and wanting to reach toward me to interpret this music and try very hard to do that. And they did, and they succeeded. So the 3 things: authenticity. I don't use, in Brazilian music, I do not use American drummers or percussionists. 2, the integrity, to appreciate and accept what they do without altering it. And then gift. The gift of these musicians to be able to interpret and evolve the music. You can't do that with people that are not masters. And it's the same thing when you integrate American musicians to work with them. I mean, just to digress for a moment, on my last album, I produced what I believe may be the definitive bossa nova jazz recording of Corcovado, Jobim's Corcovado, which is performed by a wonderful American singer in Portuguese, Alexander Jackson. But the other contributors on the album included Miles Davis, and we could talk about that, Antonio Carlos Jobim, and we could talk about that, Yvonne Lenz, a wonderful rhythm section led by my late friend Arthur Maya, the bassist, Teo Lima, the great drummer, Robertinho Silva, the great drummer, Amanda Masao, the great percussionist, Ricardo Silveira, the great guitar player, Larry Williams, the great arranger and pianist, and an orchestra, a Brazilian orchestra that we created to interpret this music. And so it was that expression. And, it's that kind of thing. It's impossible to go wrong when you have those 3 things. You have a vision, which is my job, but then there's authenticity, integrity, and gift.
Wow, that's a great answer. I love it. Thank you. And I just want to repeat the name of the Brazilian singers on this album, Mari Bodas and Monique Ellen. And why don't we talk about some of the tracks, and maybe let's talk about I know they're all favorite of yours, but
Uh-oh.
let's take it to a level a little bit
Carla, you
higher.
will get me in trouble if I start talking about favorite tracks. I have,
All right, I'll pick some then,
think better, better.
just because, they are songs that everybody knows, and, just have more commonalities, I guess. Respect Yourself. Talk
Ah,
about that. So that featured Monique Allen, Najee, and Chico Brown, and David Feldman.
yes. It's, just yesterday, Respect Yourself entered into programming in London on Jazz FM, which is the most fascinating radio station in the world, I think, right now. And it's Monique Allen from Maringá in Brazil, lives in Rio, um, interpreting this wonderful lyric from 1972, the Staple Singers and Mavis Staples, one of the greatest singers alive. And she does a wonderful job, with a natural soul. A Brazilian rhythm section, which the session was led by David Feldman, who's a Brazilian jazz pianist, with a wonderful group of musicians, with the star being Chico Brown, who's Carlinhos Brown's son, but also
Oh, I
Felipe
didn't
Alves.
know. That's his son? Really?
Yeah, that's his son. And Chico is very much, he's the future, as is Monique and Mari. And his various influences, and he was a very special addition to the ensemble that I asked to record because he was the youngest, but he also has the closest connection to American music. And I think that's age. I think that's his sense of adventure, his sense of open-mindedness. But you have Felipe Alves, the wonderful drummer in the session, and Andre Sequeira, Renato Fonseca, João Castillo, Arthur de Paula, David, of course. And they did such a wonderful job. And so it was an experiment, and it's on video because I wanted in the old school, you bring great musicians together and you had them collaborate really on the arrangement. Of course, there was pre-production work done with Robert Irving III, who's Miles Davis' collaborator, and Hanato and Dada Costa, Sergio Mello, Jesse Sadak helping with the chart, and Curtis King Jr. was there. But the idea was to bring these musicians together to interpret a piece of music and saying, look, I'd like to find the common spot between Chicago soul and Brazilian soul. And Monique, here's a microphone, sing in English. And she said, okay, Rob. And I knew she could do it. I knew she could do it. And she did it. And so in London, they're playing it. They're playing a Brazilian singer doing the Staple Singers with Brazilian musicians in English. But then you have Najee coming in, and who's one of the great jazz saxophonists of the last 40 years, playing in a different way, more R&B and less smooth jazz, for example, or contemporary jazz. And it comes together in a special way. Chico Brown does the wonderful guitar solo. In the tracks or in the vault, you have an extended guitar solo that just turns it almost like the Allman Brothers or something, and it's you could probably tell, the joy I feel from that is special. It's also played here in the US, and you hear a lot more about it. In some respects, I've told Monique yesterday, I think it's the virtuoso from a vocal perspective, it's the virtuoso song track on the album, because what she does is really special. It's not it's not a Brazilian way of singing, it's Chicago soul, and it's completely authentic. And she's such a student of music. There's integrity, and it's obvious that she's gifted. So that's
All
that
right.
song.
Okay, that's good. I'll play that for our audience.
Perfect. The next song, you want to keep going?
I'm
That's
gonna.
easy.
Oh, you gotta pick it?
That's
I was
easy
gonna
because
pick
I
Felicidade or Happiness.
okay. As long as I can come back and talk about Push Me Away.
Push Me
Um,
Away. Let's talk about Push Me Away. Let's
well,
see. Push Me Away is number 3 on the album.
that's it. That's it. It actually comes right behind Respect Yourself, and it's sequenced that way.
And
And
that's Monique Allen, João Castilho, and André
no,
Siqueira.
no, that is
Oh, I'm sorry. That's right. Mari Bodas, Joey Wolfalk, and André Siqueira.
yes. And the history, that is a Jackson song. Michael Jackson sang it with his brothers in 1978, and he was 19 years old. The Jacksons produced the album themselves. Incredible musicians, orchestra arrangement by the late Claire Fisher, and the style is third stream, which is a synergy of classical music, jazz, and Latin music, and it's extraordinary. And it's the last group album that they did in this way, all in, so to speak, before Michael Jackson did his first solo album with Quincy Jones, Off the Wall, within the next year. So he did another record with his brothers, but he was Michael Jackson then, right? So as a solo artist, separate from his brothers.
I see.
And so, they're from Gary, Indiana, which is like a suburb of Chicago. You can almost walk there from the southern part of the city. And so someone of my generation and era, I came up with the Jacksons, right? When they were young and, very like when Michael Jackson was 10 or younger, they would come to Chicago and play in talent shows. And what I wanted to do with that music, it's such a beautiful song. It's a beautiful pop song. It's R&B, many people, and it's jazzy, and many people would not remember it because of where it existed in Michael Jackson's repertoire, so to speak. And I thought that we could bring some samba elements to it, and we did, while maintaining the jazzy Chicago jazzy elements and maintaining the Latin classical elements. And Mari, I'm not sure that's her first take, but she did know the song. And we were in the studio and I have this on video. We were there for something else. And I said, "Oh, I just want to get your voice on this." She said, "I don't know the song, Robbie, and I have a cold." I said, "Nah, you can do it." Yeah. And she said, "Okay." And she's Gen Z, right? So she gets her iPhone out and she's singing the words in English for the first time. And it's amazing. And there's an epilogue to this, a part one epilogue. The song is in national rotation of Smooth Jazz Network. It is going into iHeart Radio's urban programming in Chicago. And there's going to be an opportunity for us to put it into iHeart Urban and possibly pop. A Brazilian singer who is a pop singer singing in English, being accepted by smooth jazz, urban, likely pop nationally and internationally. And I believe that there's going to be a special outcome from that because of those pop elements, the Michael Jackson connection. And we're very happy about it. And that's the bridge to A Felicidade.
That reminds me of the "I'm Never Gonna Let You Go" by Sergio Mendes that put him on the
Oh,
top 10 of the pop songs, right? That was the first time a Brazilian artist was in the top 10. I think so.
well, we'll see
Even though he
because,
wasn't singing, but it was his name. He was
well,
the artist.
it's going to be special, we believe, because it's such an incredible song, but it was recorded 46 years ago. Mari is 25, you know? And so that audience, they'll hear a beautiful song, they will sense the connection. And when they understand the Michael Jackson connection, they'll go back and listen. And it's beautiful music. It's authentic in that it's samba meets blues with jazz. It surprised me to smooth jazz embraced it like this. Maybe I shouldn't be surprised, but um, we'll see. We'll see in the next couple of weeks, if it how far it can go. I actually wrote Carlinhos Brown over the weekend. I said, Mari, I mean, Carlinhos, man, I think I can. The great Brazilian composer artist Carlinhos Brown. I think Mari and Monique can go into pop radio.
Woohoo!
Already we're doing something that's never been done before.
I know,
But
that's exciting.
yeah, so
All right, we have a couple more minutes, so let's dive into the track number 20, which is Happiness, A
ah,
Felicidade, featuring Najee and Curtis King Jr.
well, that track on some levels it's my favorite because it's the first collaboration we did with Najee, the great American saxophonist. So the last 40 years or sold millions of records and gold and platinum albums, a great performer, and he's timeless. In that we invited him to play that on the album. And the way I approached it, again, the DNA or the origin of the music was once again with Robert Irving III and Daniel Jobim. Robert actually was my very first client 40 years ago when he was with Miles Davis. And I challenged him to do a Jobim song unlike any other Jobim song had ever been done. And so we went at this several different ways. And Robert or Bobby is the protege of both Miles Davis and the great arranger Gil Evans, the only one in history mentored by both. So we wanted something that would be a bit iconoclastic, and he came up with this interesting groove. And then we built upon it through various sessions over the years with Teo Lima, the great drummer, with Arthur Maya, with Armando Massal, with Ricardo Silveira, where they were actually struggling to find that common place, that common rhythm. And all of this is on video. That this incredible day, and Daniel Jobim was there. And there's a story we can get to later. Well, I knew the song is from Black Orpheus, Felice Adagio, 1959, a very important film. But I didn't have the complete context. And in the middle of the session, while we were struggling with this rhythm, one by one, the guys would walk by me. These are the greatest Brazilian musicians alive, and saying, Robert, we've been playing this song since we were kids. And I was like, uh-oh, what have I gotten myself into? I'm in here revolutionizing a rhythm. And Daniel Jobim was there, and Daniel walked through and said, Robert, man, this has got it all started. And I'm like, oh my God, the guy from Chicago came to Rio and messed up Black Orpheus. My career is over. All this is on video. I didn't say it out loud, but now that I've told you, you're looking at my face, and I'm like, oh my God, what have I got myself into? So what I wanted to do, and where we ended up, we wound up doing something that was a bit evolved from that arrangement, although we're going to come back to it. And what I mean by that is
we have 3 more minutes left.
okay. So what we did is I said, let me approach this the way Quincy Jones did his albums in the 70s. Something very cool, very soulful, jazzy, contemporary. And with another harmonization with David Feldman and some other musicians, Keith Henderson from Chicago, Frank McComb, Ron Walters from Chicago. We created something new with Curtis King Jr.'s voice, Najee playing, and we're very happy with it. So the way it came together, it's that production paradigm we talked about, authenticity, integrity, gift, to create something that only we could do as a collective. And I'm very proud of it.
That sounds wonderful. If I throw a party, I'm going to invite you because I feel like I could listen to you for hours, and you probably have so many stories. So you will have to come back and tell us more stories. But to finish off about this project in particular, I'm going to ask you, was there a surprising moment to you, whether it was musically or meeting someone or hearing a story? Do you have any recollections of something that was really surprising and fun from this project?
Well, I think it was that session. It was that Chicago Soul session that's on videotape for 2 days, where we brought together 6 or 7 incredible Brazilian musicians and Monique Ellen, and said, Monique, we want to hear, I believe you can do this. It's never been done before, but I have no doubt you can do it. And of course, with the musicians, and asking them to find that common place with Chicago Soul and the great legacies of Chicago Soul. Some of the most gifted musicians that ever lived and composers, Curtis Mayfield, Charles Stepney, the great arranger, Earth, Wind, and Fire, because doing some of this music is like touching the holy grail of music. And if you are a serious guy in this business, you really should not deal with that music unless you can evolve it. Now, when you're evolving the greatest music of your lifetime, it takes a gift to do that. And so you have to have the right musicians, you have to have the right producer, you have to have the right artist, and it has to have a soulfulness and an integrity that you're just there to do good. And I believe we did that. That's the way the world is, I refer to as the holy grail of Black music, of my era. And I know some of the guys from Earth, Wind, and Fire, and I sent the track to them. Now, consider that for a moment. 50 years ago, they were recording that music 50 years ago at this time, and it came out 50 years ago, and it's considered one of the greatest recordings ever. And I think we did a good job.
Well, thank you, Robert. It's been a great pleasure speaking with you today on Global Ginga. Come back and see us again.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
I think it's going to stop recording now, Robert.
Okay, so I'll stop. Still says recording, so I'll be
Yeah, it
careful what I say.
does. I'm surprised that it does.
So,
Still
okay,
says
so
last